Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Marcus, and thanks, Ian. I last spoke about this in 1975 in a speech as the President of the Social Workers Association and the Social Welfare Union after Gough, saying it's an ill wind that poses no good. And after that era, we've now had 50 years to look and say what worked. Today, I would offer a half-time report. We're only halfway there. Over that period, we've had the benefit of 4 outstanding leaders of change that I have had the privilege of working with: Gough Whitlam, Paul Keating, Dick Hamer and Brian Dixon. Let me start with a short anecdote. As a social worker closing a Bedlam mental hospital in the 70s, I was visited by 2 big federal police. They asked me to justify how I could possibly have spent all that money sending people from Cyclone Tracy all around the world. Who gave you authority to send people around the world and charge the public purse? I answered, Gough. He said, send them home, so I did. Meanwhile, Joan was saving babies from being well-intentioned ladies of the Red Cross. After a distinguished career as an Aussie rules footballer, part of 5 premiership teams, All-Australian team selection and the Tassie medal, Dicko basically was named one of the team of the century in 2000. Transitioning to political football, Dicko was elected to the Victorian Assembly seat in '64 as a Liberal member for St Kilda. He became the Minister for putting his picture in the paper, as somebody has mentioned, and he never stopped. But I met Brian through Roy Morgan and the campaign to save Robert Peter Tate from Henry Bolte and Barry Jones. And the whole approach was saying that we had to do more than simply look what the majority wanted. We had to change public opinion. Together, we had an impact on the abolition of discrimination against sole parents, reformed block consultation, reconstructed social housing, reconstructed road safety and community education, and not to mention their anti-discrimination and social justice reforms. As one of the most pioneering and courageous moves at the time, they helped establish a totally different approach to social change, including my own, from a processed approach to a programmatic approach. This set the context for an appreciation of social developments that introduced and developed what made life in it so successful. It shaped the community organisation required to convert good policy into good practice. The Hamer-Dixon alliance basically was critical in a whole range of health access, championing policies that integrated traditional healing practices, physical exercise and modern medical advancements, which to this day make Victoria a leader. Recognising housing as a fundamental human right, the Hamer-Dixon Alliance advocated for affordable housing solutions and addressed the needs of marginal communities, not just developers. Their policies led to a whole approach of social housing programs emphasising the importance of a mixed income neighbourhood, tenant rights and government accountability in urban planning. A commitment to public welfare extended to road safety, seatbelts, helmets and infrastructure development. And of course, one of the most courageous of the exercise of the Hamer-Dixon Alliance was the the abolition of capital punishment. Perhaps one of the most significant contributions was their relentless advocacy for Indigenous rights and recognition. Their work laid the foundation for contemporary recognition efforts, treaty negotiations, and the recognition of Indigenous knowledge in national decision-making. They set out community education programs. They, as Brian and Ian have mentioned, did dramatic work in every school, in every community, in every city. The initiative focused on lifelong learning, adult education, and cultural activities and environmental access. Their support for local and community engagement in regional activity programs, life unit activities in all the communities, community information programs, municipal recreation officers empowered generations of teachers, communities and the like to become more self-reliant and more engaged in activities. They advocated for participatory government, transparency, freedom of information, accountability of local decision-making, and shaping policies that involved and engaged, didn't talk to. But that, in many ways, is the least of the significance of Life Unit. The pioneering leadership of the Hayman-Dixon period extended beyond traditional political mechanisms into a totally different approach to social change. Unlike Hillary Clinton, Obama, and now the latest president, which focused on rubbing raw the wounds and the years of Saul Alinsky, Dixon and Hamer said, no, we're not going to go down the negative route, we're going to go the positive route of engaging, sharing and explaining the need for change. And with the help of Paul Keating, we developed a program which showed that we can get everybody who wants a job, who's ready, willing and able, activate and can read about it outside. There was much at that time criticism of what we were doing. How dare we think that we could use television, radio, print, calendars, earth balls, but it worked, and it proved that we can make social change when we make commitments. We still have more than 8 out of 10 Australians still love and know the Life Unit campaign. Internationally recognised, the most successful campaign, and Ian and Lorraine have got a long history, along with Neville Barwick and Carol Hamilton, for having done something absolutely outstanding, showing that social change is not just possible, but necessary. So I'd like to just ask Marcus to help me show a bit about the background to how this actually works. Behind the scenes, with the help of Roy Morgan Research, we have done thousands and thousands of research. Donna grew up as an 8-year-old saying the only thing Daddy ever likes is one of Morgan's yellow books.
Most of you would probably be familiar with what used to be called the worm when we were watching TV debates and things. That was actually me conducting the worm for Roy Morgan Research. It got rebranded for Channel 7 only a few years ago, and we've been doing some even recently called the polygraph. So back in, it was 2006, we decided to do a little bit of research on Life Unit, and we got hold of a few of the commercials and we put them together in a reel, and we had a room full of people. I think at the time it was the worm, and I actually had a business card, a Roy Morgan business card that said Chief Wormologist. And I used to come to gatherings like this where I was going to have people reacting, and I'd say, "Hello, I'm Marcus Chard, I'm the chief wormologist," and I would be pulling on a rubber glove. It was always a good way to start. So we're going to show you, there was not a big enough audience in some respects to get everything we would have liked for this session, but one of the amazing things that has been developed from what was mentioned before, Roy Morgan value segments, is a way of categorising people or profiling consumers into different groups. And you're going to see here, I think, and I'm going to have to ask Colin to come back and explain as only he can. I think that the takeout we'd like you to get from this, it's only a 4-minute video. By the way, it's a program where you make choices and you change things as it plays. I've done that for you and made a video of it, so I've already made some changes. So try and follow the cursor if you like as well, and you'll see what's happening. You'll see different coloured lines. Colin's going to explain to you what those few represent. And I think the critical point is to see that different groups, promise you, I'd done hundreds of these before, I was utterly astounded at how differently people who looked the same but had been categorised by the Roy Morgan and Colin Benjamin system into value segments, how the different people, their reactions, which are different coloured lines, how they diverge on the same thing. So could we have the reactor video, please? So here we've got 4 different colours.
It's 30 years since Life Be In It started telling Australia that being active can be fun. But not only fun, being active also makes you healthier and happier. Almost everybody got the message. But 30 years on, some people out there seem to have forgotten what Life Be In It meant. Guess it's time for another wake-up call.
Be in it today, live more of your life.
What was significant about that particular test was if you look at those lines, they've got 4 lines: sensing, thinking, feeling and perceiving, based on the work of a great researcher, Carl Jung. And what that research showed on that first ad, again repeated 30 years later, was that it had almost no effect on people's behaviour.
Since the dawn of time, man has sought new and better ways to propel himself across his small planet. Now, a new age dawns as man discovers the foot. Just one foot can hop, tap, kick. 2 feet can walk, skip, run. A small hop for one man, a great step forward for mankind.
This message was brought to you in the interests of the better use of feet.
What the lines show you are 4 quite distinct and precise states of mind, second by second, looking at what people's reaction are. They never particularly liked Libby. She regarded her as a preachy bitch, but they did love that Norm character. And what's important about the lines, the red line are essentially families. The blue line are essentially business leaders. The green line are essentially environmental thinkers, and the yellow are professionals. And what's interesting to watch is that different groups watching the same ad in the same room at the same time were giving us a totally different message and saying, this is what turns me on. And look at that red line.
Oh, Norm, you're not watching the telly again.
No, this is educational, Libby.
It's all about obesity and how bad it is for you. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't like to catch it.
You don't catch obesity, Norm.
Huh? How do you get it then?
By eating too much, by eating the wrong things, or by not doing any exercise.
What is obesity exactly?
It's getting fat, Norm.
Oh.
When you eat more than you need, the excess energies turn into fat. To avoid obesity, cut down the amount you eat. Choose a balanced diet and include some regular exercise as part of your lifestyle. Obesity reduces your chance of a long and healthy life. So, watch what you eat and exercise regularly.
I've just got big stomach bone.
And what was important here was that that red line disappeared while Libby was talking. We could actually see that we were losing the family vote, we were losing, but we were winning the business vote. And what also it showed us was that we were basically having to rethink the brilliance of Stitt and Peter and Philip Adams and say maybe animatics is not the answer. It's getting awareness, but it's not getting behaviour. And the critical thing about change, it had to actually make a difference to the life of the people. So then we had that, as was mentioned earlier, the shift to there are no excuses and civil verite. And what's the difference?
The sun is shining like a ball in the sky. The birds are singing little songs as they fly. They know that life is in the earth and the trees. Blows in the river and it blows in the breeze. Come on and join in the fun. Come absolutely everyone. There are no excuses. The air is free and so is the sun. So life be in it today. Come everybody with a stick or a chair. Give us a hand to get your feet in the air. If you're too proud or you're too thin or too grey, there's no excuses cause we need you today. Come on and join in the fun. Come absolutely everyone. There are no excuses cause the air is free and so is the sun. So life be in it today. Remember no excuses cause the air is free and so is the sun. So life be in it today.
It worked.
Colin, you've talked quite a lot about research, which of course I like, and you've had a lifetime relationship with Roy Morgan that dates back even before my time with Roy Morgan, a long time ago. So what was that all about?
I first met Roy in the back blocks of the Herald Sun, along with Barry Jones. He was running an anti-hanging campaign for the adults. I was running student anti-hanging. And Roy said, well, you do understand that 2/3 of Australian people want to hang that bastard. And I said, yes, I do understand that. And that's what we've got to change. And he said, we will, and Murdoch, give him his credit, said, we will help make the change. But you have to do it based on research and you have to listen to the people.
And that's continued, hasn't it? And when we met, when you and I met, which is a long time ago, you were funding, or your department was funding, Bruce Heddy and Alex Waring in all of their life satisfaction work. How do you think that life satisfaction, social research, value studies actually help inform these things?
The critical thing about what Bruce and Alec and Michelle and the team did was to say that happiness was the best cure for chronic disease. If people have optimism, if people have self-reliance, if people had agency, then chronic disease declined.
Everyone on board? Sounds right to me. So you've constantly, over many years, relied upon Roy Morgan Research to build Life Be In It. What do you think the major contributions have been?
Every time we've ever tried to shift public opinion, we've always started with one thing. Nobody likes change except a wet baby. So the key issue was how to talk to people in their own language, in their own home, on their own medium, about what it means to take control over your life. Research from Morgan Research and thousands of yellow books and too much of Donna and Joan's time has spent with me poring over funny little figures in a database to try and work out what the bloody hell's going on.
I think Colin was actually using Roy Morgan before we progressed to yellow books, when they were those big sheets of paper, but the yellow books were generally about 2 inches deep. Yes, we were talking about inches, and A4, and many, many, many numbers. And Colin would work through them, like me, with texters and all of those things.
Texters particularly.
I still love texters, as anyone who knows me would know, and I still love yellow books, as does Colin. So longitudinal research over 50 years, Colin. How has that made a difference?
We now know 3 fundamental things. Nobody will make change if they're told what to do. There's no point government or bureaucrats or administration or even marketers telling people what they should be doing, but rather how they can do what they want to do. And the longitudinal research has shown that we've had an amazing success. Look back as you go to school each day with kids wearing a hat. Look at the cars and everybody's wearing a seatbelt. Look at the road safety campaigns we ran with the Country Roads Board to cut the road toll when people said it was impossible to stop. And every one of those studies was based on Roy Morgan research.
Colin, thank you. Colin, thank you so much for putting it into that bigger perspective, so that anyone who's had anything to do with Life Be In It knows that it really matters. A huge amount of difference has been made by all of these different bits and pieces, and it's massive, powerful social change for good. So upon that, I step in as the relatively new now co-chair, still with Colin, and I would say what's been wonderful for me is all of the guardrails that are there from people like Colin, like Ian, like Lorraine, and everybody who's been involved in Life Be In It is ready to share their wisdom. Everybody is saying, hey, we ran that program, maybe that would be of value to you, Michelle. Is there anything you need? How often do you step into a situation and the people that were there before you are still rooting for the cause, are still there? So I'm incredibly privileged to be in this situation. So it is a thrill to be here. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm the CEO of Roy Morgan Research, co-chair of Life Be In It, a director of a mining company, a mum and a grandmother. Most of my waking hours are spent at Roy Morgan Research, and I'm incredibly fortunate. I've been there since 1983. I'm incredibly fortunate to be doing things that I love, which is researching and being part of social change. Let me share with you now, because we're looking forward. We're looking forward to the issues of today and into the future. Let me share with you one of my, what I call passion projects, one that's incredibly important to me at the moment. That's our trust project, and how it's changed the way I think. For now 7 years at Roy Morgan, we've interviewed people. We've now done over 100,000 interviews with Australian people, asking them who and what they trust and who and what they distrust, the companies, and why. What is it that makes us trust organisations and people, and what is it that makes us distrust them? The results are really clear. While there are some people and professions that are trusted for their, for their honesty and ethics, institutional Australia and political Australia is operating in a miasma of distrust. And the underlying issues have become clearer with every wave. But before sharing any of those discoveries, let me divert. As CEO of Roy Morgan, as well as principal research for this program, I found myself focused afresh on how critical trust is for us as a company. This company has a long history intertwined with the history of Australia and Australians, and the future of that company is entrusted to me. Our history, of course, begins with Roy Morgan, and that's why it's called Roy Morgan. Gary Morgan's here today. Roy Morgan was his father. And Roy set out, as Colin mentioned, to represent the voice of the people in Australia. And when he was asked in the 1940s, why he did that, he basically explained it was to collect the views of real Australians and honestly and faithfully report them back. Because he said if an organisation like Roy Morgan didn't do it honestly and truthfully, it would be left up to the politicians or the journalists to claim to speak for the people. Nothing's changed. Such an incredibly important thing to understand. Today we interview well over 50,000 people each year in their homes. We ask them everything. So we're talking to them and listening. They share their views on every aspect of their lives. Their hopes, their fears, their bank balances, you name it, people tell us these things. They trust us to listen. They trust us to share their stories wisely and honestly and sensibly. And they trust us to protect their privacy and to use the information that they've entrusted to us for the right purposes. So we've interviewed, since Roy Morgan began, well over 1 million Australians, many, many more. That's a whole lot of trust from a whole lot of people. And for us, it's a lot of responsibility. So today, when Roy Morgan reports, whether it's an awareness of the Life Be In It campaign or how Australians are feeling about the government, the state of superannuation, health, education, or any of those things, social media, we have this huge responsibility to accurately portray the situations. Australians trust that we will always tell the truth. Trust is truly the foundation of all human connections. And we come back to Life Be In It in a world distracted by technology, strategic inflections of all kinds, tipping points, disruption, automation, artificial intelligence. It's easy to forget that there's people at the centre of all of this, and it's easy to forget that trust is what makes a civilised society. Without truth and without trust, there's no civil society. So steering that important project has reinvigorated my lifelong commitment to truth and trust, and I suppose humanity. So what have we discovered? It's really important at this halfway mark that Colin talked about, and hopefully it's a small part, less than halfway. As a nation, today we're more distrusting than trusting. We're less confident and optimistic than we've ever been before in living memory and research. We're more anxious and depressed. Our schools are struggling in all sorts of ways. The health system's in crisis. There's a housing crisis. Mortgage stress is extraordinary. The cost of living crisis. Theft in stores. We're seeing theft in stores. We're seeing violence in stores. This is not Australia. And we're more divided as a nation in many, many ways than ever before. So we're really in the middle of a technology-driven change and disruption with automation, AI, social media, fake news. It's terrifying. And after COVID, and in the midst of all of these things, we're all feeling less in control of our destiny, less able than I've ever known. We truly are a fragile nation. I think the solution is not going to come from Canberra trying to tell us what to do or help us out. It won't come from politics, and no one can do it on their own. But a community can, and I think that's where Life Be In It enters. So how has this research changed the way I think? Well, I guess what it made me do is to realise that I've spent my whole life measuring things and reporting on them. So standing up telling people stuff, and I realised that I haven't actually made a difference at all. I haven't actually done anything. So now I want to make a difference. As I said, no one can do it on their own. I know I can't. So fortunately, enter again Life Be In It. Now Life Be In It's introduced me to so many wonderful people, so many fantastic ideas that were born 50 years ago, were implemented during that time, and people have forgotten them, but they're still incredibly relevant. So as I said earlier, I'm fortunate to be standing on those issues that have already gone on. One of our most important partners at Life Be In It, no surprises, is Roy Morgan. It's like My Life, Roy Morgan, and now Life Be In It, totally intertwined. So Roy Morgan has provided the evidence base and the evaluation systems that will make Life Be In It continue and be strong, right, into the future, hopefully forever. Roy Morgan has agreed to assign Life Be In It the use of and naming rights to Australia's largest long-standing health and wellbeing survey. Basically, it's a continuous monitor that started in 2007, so we go back a little way, not 50 years, I wish. A monitor of all elements of health, well-being, including nutrition, exercise, psychological health, so important these days, alcohol consumption, tobacco consumption, medical state, body mass index, with detailed profiling and segmentation and geography. So this survey provides for Life Be In It a powerful branding vehicle. This is a fabulous survey. It is a fabulous data set, unparalleled. So the branding vehicle for Life Be In It is incredibly important. But even more importantly, it forms a critical basis from which we can develop ideas, make sure we know exactly where we should be going, and then monitor our progress. And then look at particular communities, for instance, where we might make a Life Be In It community, and using that same instrument, monitor the impact that we're able to make. So that's one of the critical things. The second thing that Roy Morgan provides, apart from t-shirts and boxes and arms and legs when needed, which is actually critically important. Life Be In It was essentially a TV campaign, or TV first. And we, Roy Morgan, Colin Benjamin, Life Be In It, are deeply experienced now in all sorts of communication strategies. Roy Morgan's used by all the media agencies. Something like 97% of media planning and buying decisions are made using Roy Morgan data. And Roy Morgan, together with Colin Benjamin, over all of those years, have pioneered what I honestly think is the most sophisticated instruments for persuasive communication. That sounds a bit evil, but it could be evil. It won't be evil. I think what Colin showed you with those splits on the reactor chart is that not all messaging reaches all people. Not all messaging is even heard by all people or is able to persuade people. For Life Be In It to do the kind of work it needs to do into the future, it needs to be able to use the language and the ways of communicating with people in all walks of life in a way that they will be open to and listening to. And Roy Morgan brings all of that research and all of the instruments, making them available to Life Be In It, whatever it takes. We're also announcing in the next few days 3 really important partnerships. One, with Driven Outcomes. We have the directors here, Marita D'Amico and Kent Tolmer. Driven Outcomes is a small Melbourne-based business that creates and runs education programs or incursions into schools designed to engage kids while they explore and experience all sorts of things, from managing money, setting up a business in their own community, and what we'll be doing with them is rebuilding the Life Games program. So that will be incredible. The whole thing that I love about the programs these guys build is that they really focus on kids finding their own superpowers, giving them the confidence to reach out and do what needs to be done. The second one is with AusActive, a peak body for all the sporting centres, gymnasiums and all of those kinds of things. So that will give us reach into a whole range of areas that are all over Australia, already engaged with people at that elite end, remember the top 20 we saw, and that, you know, some of the end where people are in the mood for it, but will give us the power to actually reach out to all others and invite them in. And third, Heal Yourself and Move, which is a movement if you like. And this is basically to help people find ways to get started. A lot of people actually find they can't quite get started. They think they should go for a walk, but something hurts. And, you know, Zach was my healer. I had really bad back problems. I was ready to kind of throw it in. And Zach was able to help me get moving again, and I haven't looked back. I want to share that with you. So Zach will be a partner of ours as well. And finally, I've also met some incredible people that will be part of our forward journey. One of them is Christine, Dr. Christine Durham, a totally extraordinary, inspiring woman who embodies one of the Life Be In It campaigns that we've heard about today, no excuses. So Christine can be described in many ways, and she has been, including her many awards, the books that she's written, like Doing Up Buttons, a disability advocate, many of those things. But for me, Christine is a very special woman who, after a devastating car accident that basically broke her body and her brain and everything, from which she was told she would never recover, took charge of her own journey to wellness and then shared that journey with others, achieving a PhD along the way after all of that, and then sharing her views with many invitations to speak to all sorts of people, including at medical conferences where medical people were beginning to listen to the importance of how an individual, a human, can actually take charge of their own wellness, the power of the human spirit. We're also in discussion with a wonderful group called Blue Earth. We have Malcolm Freak here today, listening in, and I hope feeling inspired, because the work they're doing is very much in line with what Life Be In It has been doing, and we have wonderful shared values. We're also in discussions with the Port Fairy region community about potentially creating a pilot Life Be In It community there. So many things on the radar. But let me close by just again saying thank you to everyone who's been involved in this. Thank you all for coming. Either you are in that group, either you're in the group that's done it, or you're in the group that's about to be tapped on the shoulder to be part of the next 50 years. Thank you all.